Hi, good morning. As we begin, I want to note that we're going to be recording this call to share out afterwards. My name is Dave Wallach with Americans for Responsible Growth, and also want to note that we'll have time for Q&A at the end as well. So feel free to type out questions during the presentation using the Q&A feature, and we'll circle back to those at the end. Americans for Responsible Growth is an advocacy group that's coordinating with a number of elected state and municipal financial leaders throughout the U.S. who are concerned about ensuring long-term economic growth and that costs don't rise for consumers as a result of the administration and Congress's disastrous economic policies. Today, we're going to start off with Connecticut Treasurer Eric Russell. Treasurer Russell.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate being here with my colleagues as always, as we continue to advocate for residents of our state and residents across the country, and really push back on what we've seen over the last 14 weeks. And that is rising cost. It's destabilizing of markets, I think, and most importantly, betraying of the very people who supported this president based on his promises to prioritize economic prosperity and affordability to families across the country. And the reality is instead what we've seen is policies that are doing the exact opposite. Erratic tariff policy is driving up inflation and destroying global alliances that we've created over decades. It's consumer confidence waning and people's uncertainty about what to expect in the future. It is the slowing down of the economy in our states, but across the country, which is causing businesses not to invest or to pull back from hiring plans that they've been building out. And it's tanking and volatile markets, right, which is jeopardizing the retirement security of so many people across this country. But even worse, I think, is we're seeing Donald Trump do what he has always done, and that is enrich and empower himself further and his family members and his billionaire friends all along the way, all at the expense of working people. And we see that in the recent selling off, essentially, of the White House, selling access to the White House for his most recent meme coin for him to personally profit off of. And it appears clear that while working people, those nearing retirement and relying on their 401ks and public pension plans like ours that are battling the hits that we're taking to our portfolios as a result of these disastrous policies and volatility, that Trump and his wealthy friends are making billions off the market and benefiting from their ability to control decisions and, frankly, time when they invest, right? And so I think the results of all of these policies as treasurers, we are seeing firsthand. We see that in interaction with our constituents, with working people in our states. We are facing it from a budget perspective as we are all working to pass budgets that work for working people in our states, with cuts that have already happened and further cuts that are being threatened and anticipated. We're seeing it in the slowing of economic growth. And as I mentioned, businesses being hesitant to invest because of the chaos and uncertainty that's taking place. And what we should be focused on is building an economy that works for everyone. And we are moving in the exact opposite direction of that. I think it's also nerve-wracking that the damage of these policies is not fully felt yet. As we think about tariff policy, knowing that the number of goods that are coming into the country from places like China that many small businesses are relying on are slowing down, that we're going to be seeing empty shelves and higher prices, that we're going to be seeing layoffs as the economy slows down. And what was just reported is stagflation, right? Increasing cost with the economy slowing down, as we have been expressing as treasurers concern about from day one of this administration. So what will happen, as always does, is that working people are going to deal with the consequences of these policies more than anyone else. And as we are thinking about our budgets and threatened cuts to Medicaid and Social Security and SNAP benefits and special education, programs that people are relying on for their livelihood, are all being threatened with the main goal of cutting trillions of dollars in taxes for millionaires and billionaires in this country. I think the positive news here is that people are starting to pick up on this game. People are realizing that this con that's being perpetrated by the president is not okay. And it's why you're seeing his approval rating tanking. It's why you're seeing satisfaction with progress economically going down the tubes right now. And it's why you're seeing tens of thousands of people step up here in Connecticut and all across the country to push back on these policies and what is happening. And so what we are asking for is for Congress to step up, for Congress to grow and do what they were by their constituents to do. We don't have to be in this situation. And Congress has the ability to act and act now. And so we will continue to work as treasurers with our other elected and officials in our state to represent our constituents well and to continue to push back on these detrimental policies. And we ask Congress to step up and do the same. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Washington State Treasurer Mike Pelliciotti. Treasurer Pelliciotti.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, hello. Good morning. My name is Mike Pelliciotti. I'm the treasurer here in Washington State. The first 100 days of the Trump administration have led to precisely the conditions which state financial officers like us actively seek to avoid: instability that disrupts markets, governance, and confidence. The damage done in such a short amount of time is unprecedented and will take years of work to repair. Wherever I travel in Washington State, there is an economic sector that is hurting, a local government losing funding, or infrastructure that is no longer reliable because of indiscriminate tactics being employed by this administration. Millions of Americans supported change, even shaking up the status quo. What they did not want is a sledgehammer that is breaking budgets for businesses, governments, and households. And this is just the first strike against the American economy. Today in The Economist, an architect of the president's presidential transition plan said the president's actions today are part of a strategic plan to for a complete demolition of the last century of American economic policy. Whether the president has no plan, or it is true his plan is to dismantle every economic safety net from Medicare to Social Security, either way, the average American is going to lose. We are here today to demand that Congress do its constitutional duty on behalf of the Americans they are being paid to represent. They must be an active partner in constraining an executive that has gone well beyond his authority to the detriment of the nation. Things that we should be able to take for granted from the federal government now are decaying at a rapid pace and in many instances are already failing. It is altering the decision-making processes for state and local governments, from offices like ours down to school and fire districts. We're actively asking ourselves the question: will the checks from the federal agencies clear today? Is the federal government going to hold up its end of the deal? Just yesterday, I was in Port Angeles, a rural community in the far northwest corner of our state, meeting with local officials. Nearly every aspect of their book of business was at risk because of the shocking level of instability. Logging exports are down. Tourism from across the Canadian border is down. Business partners and tenants were freezing plans while they hoped for more stable future conditions. In a community like theirs, this is the backbone of the economy being broken, all while the cost of groceries, housing, and services are going up. America is losing and growing weaker under the president's economic policies. He appears either to be in denial or he is being misled by kiss-up advisors who are telling him otherwise. The emperor has no clothes, and for his sake and America's, we are here to speak the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Pelliciotti. Now we'll move to Colorado State Treasurer Dave Young. Treasurer Young.
Thank you, Dave, and appreciate the introduction. I am Dave Young. I'm the Colorado State Treasurer, and I'm honored to join my colleagues today and speak out against President Trump's reign of chaos. And I'm going to highlight and underscore some of the things that has already been said by my two colleagues, but also speak specifically some things about Colorado. But let me first start by saying that, like the others have said, the last 100 days have been marked by destruction, uncertainty, and cruelty, from unlawful deportations and scattershot tariffs to his dismantling of the federal workforce. The president is actively undermining economic growth and stability. And here's the point that I want to make today, that it's imperative that Congress assert its constitutional authority to prevent further damage to American leadership. Colorado has already experienced the negative effects of President Trump's agenda, starting with the disruptive actions of the so-called Department of Government Efficiency under Elon Musk. Despite its name, U.S. spending has actually increased by over $154 billion since the president took office. In our state alone, hundreds of probationary workers and employees of AmeriCorps, the Forest Service, and the National Park Service have lost their jobs. I'm deeply concerned for the 40,000 federal workers in Colorado and the many state and local organizations that rely on federal grant funding to do important work like behavioral health and community services. More job losses will force many to rely on unemployment benefits and other safety net services, hurting our economy in the long run. As we've heard mentioned about tariffs, Trump's scattershot tariff policy also threatens our economy. The disarray, intimidation, and mixed signals create deep uncertainty for Colorado business owners, making it all but impossible to plan, invest, and stay competitive. This comes as our state takes a larger role in the world economy. In 2024, Colorado imported $17 billion and exported $10.5 billion in goods. Those trade dealings are heavily dependent upon partnerships with Canada, China, and Mexico. In fact, international trade supports about 820,000 jobs in Colorado, and that represents over 20% of the employment of the state. These strained international relationships and the damage to our economy will take years to rebuild, weakening our position in global markets. It's clear that investors are losing confidence in America's stability as well. Congress must act to restore our standing in the world economy. Now I want to turn to Medicaid and touch on the Republicans' proposed budget plan that's been backed by President Trump. Left unchecked, the president allies would strip Coloradans of essential benefits, plunging families into poverty while further destabilizing our workforce. In Colorado alone, 1.2 million seniors, disabled people, pregnant mothers, and working class families depend on Medicaid. This includes my sister Dorothy, who is very disabled and who relies on Medicaid for life-saving care. If federal cuts go through, our state must make up that difference by slashing other essential programs or kicking thousands of Coloradans off Medicaid. I refuse to accept those options or that choice. Programs like Medicaid improve long-term outcomes, protect the middle and working class, and boost the quality of our life. They make America great. Billionaires don't need another tax cut, especially on the backs of hardworking families. We need a vocal, united, and bipartisan coalition to defend these vital programs. So judging from his first 100 days, we know President Trump will continue to cause serious damage to our economy, our democracy, and our way of life. And just to reinforce what I started with, I urge our congressional delegation to rein in his haphazard leadership. Together, we can build an economy that works for all Americans. Thank you. And back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Treasurer Young. Now we'll move to New Mexico State Treasurer Laura Montoya. Treasurer Montoya.
Good morning. Good morning, colleagues. I am thankful that our state treasurers are taking the lead in keeping Americans' interests at the forefront and holding this executive and legislative branches accountable. There's no secret that our nation has reached a pivotal moment, and everybody is watching, and some of them are feeling it. One that is undermining the credibility and sanctity of our government. Strong economies rely on stable governance and reliable market conditions. And we've not seen any of that in the last 100 days. Markets, investors, our foreign partners, and even citizens are questioning whether our own government can continue providing steady, credible leadership, economic or otherwise. Uncertainty has already hold, and the negative economic and governmental impacts may prove far-reaching and long-lasting. As highlighted in our letter, we are unnecessarily being forced by our nation's executive branch to navigate the symptoms of economic instability, such as stock market viability, weakening dollar performance, risk borrowing costs, decreasing consumer confidence, and threats to the independence of the Federal Reserve. Never in our history have we seen something like this. These outcomes we're facing are not abstract, but need to be looked at holistically. They directly impact the lived realities of everyday Americans as we increasingly struggle with higher costs, pocketbooks stretched thin, and the lack of faith in our own institutions. Chair Powell noted 4 key policy factors contributing to uncertainty that the Fed was monitoring closely: trade, immigration, fiscal policy, and regulation. Congress needs to do the same by recognizing its role in shaping these dynamics, acting with foresight, and providing the stable, consistent governance that economic confidence demands. Not to mention, our nation standing in the world stage is being threatened as trust among our trade partners starts to erode. Our once steady leadership becomes clouded with dysfunction and unpredictability, and other countries race to fill the growing void of economic leadership that we are leaving behind. These effects are not exclusive to our federal economy, and states are already grappling with the added pressures and uncertainty as instability trickles down into our jurisdictions. We are doing our jobs by upholding our commitments to service as public fiscal stewards. They need to start doing their jobs. We work tirelessly every day to protect our constituents by maintaining fiscal discipline, investing in our communities, but our efforts are undermined when our own federal government is creating obstacles from the top instead of providing constructive support. The supposed patriots in Congress are failing to grasp the core principles of our Constitution that this nation was built on and what makes us American: the international balancing of powers, accountable representation, and power vested in the people. When Congress abdicates its constitutional powers and duties, a reflection of their choice to represent special interests and corporations over people, we risk the value our forebears fought and died for to establish this country. Members of Congress were elected to their positions of power not to cower in the face of partisan pressure or political convenience, but to stand tall, uphold their oaths, and do right by the people that they were elected to serve. We, the people, wasn't placed as the first words of our Constitution by mistake. It serves as a deliberate indication that power lies with the citizens. If public servants will not live up to their own titles, then it's time for them to step aside and make room for those who will actually understand the responsibility that comes with their power and the practice of the power with integrity and serve. I would also like to address Americans directly. You must remain aware of your authority. You need to be proactive. You need to vote. You need to hold people accountable. You need to go to town halls. And I know people are stressed. In New Mexico, Wallet Hub has indicated that New Mexico is the #1 stressed state in the country. You need to be proactive and be engaged, because that's the only time we're going to be able to create changes, when we all work together to accomplish it and hold government accountable. It is supposed to work for us and by us. The beauty of this country is that the profound belief that all people were created equal, no matter your background or livelihood, and never underestimate how far the sound is carried when you rise up and make noise. I'm happy to be a part of our state treasurers, holding everyone accountable, because this is completely, according to our Congresswoman here in New Mexico, not normal.
Thank you, Treasurer Montoya. Now we'll move to Massachusetts State Treasurer Deb Goldberg.
So I am so thrilled and impressed by our group of treasurers that those who know me know I'm not typically speechless. However, the introductions by all of them really summarize exactly how I feel and what we're experiencing here in Massachusetts. So I don't need to repeat, and certainly not to the press who are listening, what has gone on in the last 100 days. But I can very specifically address how incredibly destructive this approach that's going on in Washington. And why is our letter to Congress? Because Congress does have a role here. They are not supposed to be a rubber stamp for whatever executive order comes out of the State House. Congress represents the individual districts. Congress must be concerned about the economic consequences of erratic behavior and negative policies. And so that is specifically who we're speaking to. It's not too late to stop the roll of the snowball downward, but it needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. I have watched with dismay after rebuilding an economy. For us in Massachusetts, we were able to hold the line during COVID because of our strong fiscal policies, our solid bond rating, our liquidity. We were able to stay the course and take care of people and roll out into a increasingly productive economy. What's happened in the last 100 days is impacting us in a more negative fashion than even COVID did. And just a few perfect examples. We've already heard about tariffs. We've talked about tariffs. But to give you just one solid example of the impact on Massachusetts, Boston is an international hub of travel. 90% of the jet fuel comes from Canada. Our electricity comes from Canada. What does that say to you? Construction for homes, and we struggle to provide affordable homes for middle-class working people. Cost of lumber comes from Canada. All of these issues, higher mortgage rates. What happened to we were going to make America prosperous again? Every little thing going on is making us less prosperous. And candidly, here in Massachusetts, we rely on our businesses across the Route 128 Tech Corridor and the Cambridge Biotech Hub. It's interrelationships with our teaching universities. Harvard, MIT, Tufts, UMass, you name it. They have all become areas to attack rather than support. We're staying focused, protecting our bond rating, safeguarding our rainy day fund. But we have no idea what this budget is going to look like and how to fully shield ourselves from national dysfunction. The policy changes have caused shock and panic within our medical research community, and we rely heavily on NIH grants. University leaders are trying to hold it together in order to keep things moving. But we're a powerhouse of research, entrepreneurship, advanced manufacturing, generating thousands of high-quality jobs and producing breakthroughs in fields ranging from artificial intelligence to, as I said, biotechnology. The administration and Congress should be investing in and enabling this growth, not harming it. And our work here helps us be one of the global leaders in innovation. Now is the time for Congress to step up, not step back, to keep America great, to make America great again. Funding caps need to disappear. We need to restore full support for indirect research costs, the long-term health, economy, and global competitiveness of our nation. Is exampled in Massachusetts. So Congress, I have one thing to say: do your job. You can turn the tide. You don't need tax cuts for billionaires. You hear this a lot, but that is the case. We just need to make sure we take care of people so that they can have a mortgage, have a job, and be able to pay their grocery bills. I want to make one small statement about groceries. I'm a former grocer. I can tell the administration how to get grocery prices down, but they aren't focused on that. They're not focused on what they were elected for. So what is it they're focused on? Certainly not making sure that everyday people in each of our individual states thrive. Our democracy has survived for almost 250 years. We need Congress to step forward and make sure we will survive another 250 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Goldberg. So now we're going to move to questions. If you have questions, please use the question and answer tool to put your questions in, and we'll do our best to get to as many as possible. We're going to start with first question. You've chosen to address Congress rather than just the Trump administration. Can you explain why that is and whether there are specific actions that you all believe Congress should take? Anybody like to start?
Well, I think I kind of mentioned that, and I think Laura did too, before we knew that was going to be a question. But the reality is that the administration is sort of stuck on a path of destruction. This commitment to tariffs. I mean, I listened yesterday on the news and heard how much money is coming in. So much money is not coming in. So much money is definitely not coming in. And as many of us mentioned, Congress has a role here. They just need to seize their power back.
Well, and I agree with that as well. And we've been communicating with the White House as well. I have the number of an outreach person who I've been communicating with. I don't think that any of the things that we're seeing are a mystery to the administration, but I agree that Congress can't be a rubber stamp here, and they actually have specific roles that, and particularly around the power of the purse, that they need to exert that pressure to look out for all Americans, not just the very wealthy. And these tariffs result in essentially a tax increase on everybody, and consumers are losing confidence. They wanted the prices to go down, but prices are going to go up because people are paying basically a Trump tariff tax as a result of his actions. I've heard from business leaders and ag producers across the state saying that they're very concerned about how they plan their businesses going forward when the president just wakes up on a whim every morning and changes tariff policy. You can't plan well as a business, as an ag producer, when policies change on a daily basis. We're hearing one day that they're never going to change, and then we also hear that there's negotiations going on, but there's no evidence of actual negotiations or a strategy that's being pursued. Business leaders, whether they're running a farm or advanced manufacturing or any other kind of small business, have to make well-informed decisions about how to invest their capital, and they can't change that on a willy-nilly basis day in and day out. They have to set a plan and go for it. So the actions of the administration have to reflect that same kind of smart business sense. If the administration is not going to go that direction, it's up to Congress with the power of the purse to reel in the president and set this country on a correct course.
Can I just say real quick, this is not simply an issue of Congress voting as the president wants. It's not an issue of being a rubber stamp. That would imply Congress has taken some action. Congress has completely abdicated their constitutional duty to actually govern. And they're being paid to do a job. It is getting embarrassing at this point. And we're in a situation where Congress simply needs to govern, pass bills, do something, and not just allow the president to run off on his own agenda without any notion that there's a separate and co-equal branch of government.
So I think this is government 101. You have three branches. You have an executive branch who's running a shit show. You have a legislative branch who has a House and a Senate that is supposed to balance each other and also balance the other three branches. And then you have the judicial branch, which can be appointed judges by the executive. Since the executive is not doing the job that is putting the people first, all people, not just rich people, all people first, then the Congress both the House and the Senate. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican, you're an American before and all of the purple, the red, and the blue. And you have to be able to understand that your job is to represent and serve the people that voted you in. So whether you're on any side of the aisle, people are being impacted, whether they're veterans, whether they're people with disabilities. Everyone we've said that we are supposed to be supporting the most, we're hurting the most by these actions. And the volatility within the market is not making business people, medical professionals, educators, they're not making them feel good. They're making them feel more stressed. And people are reacting based on the amount of stress because of all of the unpredictability. Depending on where we put our finger today, we're going to decide whether the increase of the tariffs goes up or down. That is not the way government should work. It's supposed to be separate, it's supposed to be independent, and it's supposed to be for the people that you represent and serve.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. Can any of you elaborate on how the president's policies have impacted the pension funds or other fund oversight?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. And I would just say volatility and unpredictability is not good for the market. It's not good for business. It's not good for the economy. And what we've seen is direct impacts as we saw a huge tank in the market after these tariff policies were rolled out, right? The US equities market was hit incredibly hard, as well as equities markets all around the country. I think on the fixed income and bond side, what you would normally see when equity markets drop is that there is a flight to safety, which is usually US bonds, and that the world has shifted its position on that in many ways, and that they are not looking at the US and the US dollar as being that flight to safety anymore. And a lot of this is because of tying into the last question. It's not only what the president is doing, it's the fact that we have a Congress that is not willing to act. And so the message is very clear, is that we can anticipate this uncertainty and volatility for years to come. And that is not good for us on the investment side, but more importantly, it's not good for people, right? As pension funds, we are able to withstand some of this volatility. It's certainly detrimental to our states and to taxpayers, but who I feel more for is as we think about working people in this country. The 65-year-old who called me and is asking if they should be taking their money out of their 401k that they're counting on, they plan to retire 2 years from now, but don't know if that's even going to be an option. And should they be pulling their money out of the market, or are things going to bounce back? There is so much uncertainty and a lack of stability for people right now. It's incredibly detrimental. I think the other side is on private markets, right? There was some expectation that we were going to see a lot more business and a lot more transactions with deregulation, right? And tax cuts for the wealthy. And we're not seeing that right now either, because again, the business community is uncertain about what's to come economically. They're not able to count on any levelability from the administration. And so we are seeing the start of this. I think the potential for this to get a lot worse for us from an investment perspective. And we are trying to make sure that we do everything that we can in the short term to make sure we're able to withstand that volatility and uncertainty.
Would anybody else like
Well,
to?
Go ahead. In my opening remarks, I talked about the job losses for federal workers, and that's a direct impact here in Colorado. We're also seeing a withholding of grant funding as well, and Treasurer Goldberg had referred to how important the research capabilities of universities in her state are, likewise in our state. And we have federal agencies like NOAA that have uncertainty as well. They perform extremely important jobs that we need to count on. Our National Park Service having uncertainty as we head into fire season is just a level of chaos that none of us want to see happen. So when we have the president extorting actions or extorting agencies and universities to perform in a certain way by withholding funds, that is not a healthy way to work with the American people. And this should be something where we work together to come up with an efficient way to make things happen in our communities. But withholding funds and creating chaos is not the way to do that.
I'd like to jump in on that just to add, because the question is both the pension funds, deferred compensation funds, but also the impacts of grants. And our economic engine here in Massachusetts is healthcare, higher education, and the research that's intertwined between those pieces. And when I say that the country relies on what goes on here in Massachusetts, I am not stating our position. For a small state, we have an enormous amount of dependency on Harvard Medical School, the Mass General Hospital BI Deaconess mix of hospitals that rely on advanced research. Our research in cancers is over the top, and all of that is being impacted. When you speak to physicians here, the ones who are primary care, their jobs are fine for now. However, the ability to supply the most advanced treatments to their patients, and patients, by the way, who come from all over the world to be treated at Boston Children's Hospital, at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. Those hospitals rely on the advanced kind of research that is done. And now with AI and the biotechnologies that are being promoted, Moderna is in Cambridge. Moderna was at the cutting edge, as we all know, of COVID vaccines. They're on to the next kind of thing, but research grants are being cut dramatically. And I'm proud of the president of Harvard University to step up. But that also means that not only do they have to tighten their belts, but the research associated with Harvard Medical School has to tighten their belts, which has an impact on our ability in state government to deliver basic services, whether it's food to the food banks that are requiring additional resources because so many people are ending out of work already. Those are just graphic examples of what's going on here. And yes, Treasurer Russell, and I apologize for earlier referring to people as on first names, but that shows my fondness and my grocery background. Treasurer Russell perfectly well described the impact on pension funds and deferred compensation investment.
I wrote a list. I think this question is important because whoever asked it is looking at this a little bit more holistically. So you have the tariffs. I'm in New Mexico, so Mexico is our #1 trade partner. We've talked about how it's impacted our agricultural industry. We have oil and gas. We're the second largest producer of oil and gas. We get equipment from Mexico. Construction is impacted, which is housing. Also, many of us have a housing crisis in our part of in our different respective states. You have Medicaid cuts. We're the #1 recipient of Medicaid in our state. So if that happens, or just the fears of it is scaring a lot of people. It's already hard to get a doctor's appointment, especially in the rural areas. We have 61% rural. You have Intel, which is now just coming out that they're going to be laying off more people. We have our national labs, which impacts all of you too, that we need and that have been impacted. We have a lot of federal employees that have been laid off, including in our Forest Service, which you know that we just went through 2 very traumatic fires that we're still dealing with, that has already impacted the agricultural industry, especially in northern New Mexico and in Ruidoso area, Lincoln County. And now you have people who are not going to be doing the thinning of the trees, which is going to create more fires when FEMA doesn't even want to give you the money that they already had to give you. And in fact, that fire was done by the federal government. So it wasn't regular people that did this. The federal government did it, and then it impacted us. And then now we still haven't got the resources for it. And now we don't have the people to help the thinning of the trees. Laying off people is going to definitely impact our families. I just spoke to our universities, to Treasurer Goldberg's point and Treasurer Russell's. I think we went from $9 billion to $2 billion in the side portion of the funds for federal grants. So it's the accountants, it's the researchers behind the researchers, it's all the people who do the legwork behind the research. All of that got cut nationally. So our universities are concerned about that. Our universities are concerned about their independence of being able to educate folks without having to be micromanaged or dictated how they're supposed to provide for their students. And then you also have our regular schools, our K through 12. They're also very concerned. They get Medicaid funds, they get other funds from the federal government. And they also have to deal with, as teachers and educators, the stress that their children are feeling from all of the impact that their parents and grandparents are feeling in all of this. 41% of all children in New Mexico are being raised by a guardian or by a grandparent. So, of course, the concerns that grandparents have is also stressing out those children. So, holistically, all of this mad chaos is impacting us in our nation. And then when you look at it internationally, there's a lot of concern from the financial standpoint. What's the value of the dollar? What's the value of our word? What's the value of our trust? All of these things are not going to just go away, even when Congress decides to act, or if they decide to act. This is going to take a long time to heal a lot of relationships that have been broken, and a lot of small businesses might not ever be able to continue to finish being a business because they can't get the provided things that they need in order to be able to produce for that business. So holistically, this is a nightmare, and this is just the beginning. All those people that got laid off are still getting funds until August or September.
I can just say real quick, I want to fully answer the question, I guess, specifically to Washington. It relates to federal funding. It's one of the reasons why I've been so focused and clearly communicating the need for reserves and protecting our rainy day fund in our state. And I know other treasurers feel very similar in terms of the importance of that in light of the unprecedented actions by the federal government. As in response to the specific question about pensions, I cannot speak on behalf of our state investment board, and I'm not doing so today. What I will say, though, is as a member of our state investment board, since becoming treasurer, I've warned about the need to de-risk our portfolio. And a little over a year ago, specifically highlighted to SIB leadership the risks that existed for a potential downturn, and if Donald Trump was elected, the potential for increased volatility from the isolationism that would occur with our markets. So I think it is only prudent to conclude that going forward, this will have negative impacts to our pension investments. And I think it is unwise for the state in any way to anticipate greater returns or maintain the existing allocation or portfolio in light of those risks.
And Dave, if I could just put a fine point on this, because I think this is really important on the pension side, and I appreciate Treasurer Pellicciotti's comments on this as well. And I know we all have a role in our state's pension funds. I am the principal fiduciary here in Connecticut. Last fiscal year, we performed over 11.5%. And to put that in perspective, because I think this is what is really important, that added nearly $6 billion to our state's pension funds, shoring up retirement security for state employees and teachers and retirees, and importantly for taxpayers, money that they do not have to pay in, right, to make sure that those individuals have the retirement benefits that they promised. And what we are seeing now is these downturns in markets that are going to negatively impact our returns as states. And usually when this happens, they are things that are out of our control, right? It is something going on in the world. It's a geopolitical event. It's uncertainty in the markets that's created by inflation and a pandemic. Everything that we are seeing right now, the cost that is going to result for states and for pensioners is because President Trump and his administration continue to put policies out there that are going to destabilize our country and destabilize markets in the business community and the economy. And so these are going to have very real costs and impacts to states and to taxpayers. And it is a result of these policies that we're seeing. And we are going to see that played out in investment performance for pension plans and endowments all across the country.
Well, and like Treasurer Pelliciotti, I am one of 16 trustees on the Colorado PARA Board, Public Employees Retirement Association. I'm not the spokesperson, but I am a fiduciary, and I'm not speaking for them, but I know that we are not day traders as a pension. We invest for the long term, but it is hard to invest for the long term when the administration is speculating on a daily basis. It's hard to actually set a course that makes sense. And now, as we heard earlier, and I can't remember which of us was talking about the decoupling. It used to be, that the fixed income, the bond portfolio would bolster if the equities were struggling. That's completely fallen apart. The entire system of how we have tried to invest smartly is being unwound by the actions of the administration. And as Treasurer Montoya is saying, it's going to take a long time to restore the trust in the markets. And we're in a global struggle here with other nations that are trying to vie for power and prestige over the United States. We've got to stay the course to make sure that at all levels of our economy, including our pensions and the retirement security of the people in the country, that we get back on track.
I think the other aspect, so Treasurer Russell is very different from all of us, right? He's a sole fiduciary. On mine, I'm a part of a board for public employees, educational retirement, and the Sovereign Wealth Fund. We've done and asked for shock analysis and risk analysis. You have to keep in mind, we all have our financial reports delayed because that's just the way it is in order for us to get end of month. I think it's not just the pension fund because we're long-term investors. So we have more diversification, and we have an asset allocation that is based on our liquidity needs. So we've reassured our pensioners, but I think long-term, the rate of return that Treasurer Russell was talking about versus what they might be getting this next year, all of that impacts the overall fund and how much you have of a percentage of being fully funded. And that's the part that's concerning. The liquidity aspects for each one of us, I'm sure we're okay for the short term. It's the long-term effects of all of this that is impacting. Putting the pension side aside and the sovereign wealth fund aside, everyday Americans don't have that kind of money. They don't have that type of asset allocation. They don't have that type of expertise. They put in the very little money that they have into the stock market, thinking that they are going to be able to get a return that's going to help them to live a fruitful end of golden years life. And now those of them who are closer to the golden years are going to have to hold off on those golden years because of what the market has been doing to their funds. That is impacting everyday Americans even more so.
And I chair our pension fund and I chair all of the subcommittees on our pension fund. And what I can tell you is that in order to maintain a strategy, and our strategy is, as others have said, for the long term, and we do have balanced portfolios, and very often we don't get the huge rise in the market because we're balancing it with a more conservative strategy. To put it bluntly, and this is again why Congress needs to step in, the volatility, the attacks on the Federal Reserve, and now the impact on GNP and consumer confidence is going to be directly impacting all aspects, including our pension funds. But they're a symptom of what's going on. All of the economies are going to be dropping down unless this stuff stops. And Congress goes in and begins to do their job again. This is for their constituents. The constituents that are had supported the election of the president, they are hurting. Their in shock. They did not expect to lose all the things that they're losing. They did not expect tariffs to harm what is being harmed. They did not expect to have the cost of living greater and no relief in the grocery stores. Congress needs to step in, and it needs to be bipartisan, and they need to save the nation.
Thank you all. For all of you who've attended this event, we're going to share the recording of the Zoom in the next hour, hour and a half. And appreciate you being with us. And thank you, treasurers, for your comments. Have a great day.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.